We're ready.
Our first committee today is the Planning and Economic Development Committee. Those committee members are Fusco, Kamer, Connor, Boyes, and Hannah. All committee members are present except for Councilman Kamer. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Viviano. I assume with that comment, we do not need to make a roll call or have a roll call?
Correct.
Okay, very good. With that, then we will entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a second out there?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good. With that, we're going to take time on the regular agenda, and we'll move into the new list of legislation. Sarah, would you be so kind as to please read in these pieces? Thank you.
Item number 1 is an ordinance amending or supplementing Title 15, Chapter 153 Zoning Code, Article 2, Districts and Maps, and Article 5, Accessory Uses and Residence Districts by adding use districts to the form-based zoning code and declaring an emergency.
For an advertised for public hearing, number 2.
Item number 2 is an ordinance amending the zoning map by changing the single-family residence use district classification U1H1A1 on property generally bounded by West South Street to the north, Dickerson Street to the south, Penn Avenue and Lakeshore Boulevard to the east, and Summit Lake to the west, and by changing the two-family residence use district classification U1H1A2 on property generally bounded by a westerly extension of West Long Street to the north, Ira Avenue to the south, the rear of property fronting the north and west side section of West Miller Avenue to the east, and Summit Lake to the west, to an open space park district and declaring an emergency.
For an advertised for public hearing?
Item number 3 is an ordinance amending the zoning map by changing the single-family residence use district classification U1H1A1 on property generally bounded by West Crozier Street to the north, on the rear of properties on the north side of West Long Street to the south, Bachman Court to the east, and Lakeshore Boulevard to the west, and by changing the two-family residence use district classification U1H1A2 on property generally bounded by a westerly extension of West Long Street to the north, Ira Avenue to the south, and by property on all sides of the section of West Miller Avenue to the west of Lakeshore Boulevard to a neighborhood flex district and declaring an emergency.
For an advertised for public hearing, item number 4.
Item number 4 is an ordinance amending the zoning map by changing the single-family residence use district classification U1H1A1 on property bounded by West South Street to the north and Princeton Street to the west, addressed as 192 West South Street and 941 Princeton Street, on property generally bounded by West Miller Avenue to the north, Ira Avenue to the south, and by property fronting the east side of Lakeshore Boulevard, and by changing the two-family residence use district classification U1H1A2 on property generally bounded by West Miller Street to the north, Ira Avenue to the south, and by property fronting the west side of Lakeshore Boulevard, by changing the retail business use district classifications U3H1A3 and U3H3A4 on property generally bounded by Bachdell Avenue to the north, Ira Avenue to the south, South Main Street to the east, and Edison Street to the west, and by changing the commercial use district classification U4H3A3 on property bounded by East Long Street to the north, West Miller Avenue to the south, and abutting the west side of South Main Street, and by changing the ordinary industry use district classification U5H3A2 on property north of East Long Street and on the west side of South Main Street to a mixed-use 3 district and declaring an emergency.
For an advertised for public hearing,
Item number 5 is an ordinance amending the zoning map by changing the single-family residence use district classification U1H1A1 on property generally bounded by West South Street to the north, Dickerson Street to the south, Old Main Street to the east, and Summit Lake to the west, and by changing the retail business use district classifications U3H1A2, U3H1A3, and U3H3A4 on property generally bounded by West South Street to the north, Lake Street to the south, and Edison Street to the west, and by changing the commercial use district classification U4H2A2 on property south of Lake Street, west of Old Main Street, and on property bounded by Ira Avenue to the north, Vincent Street to the south, Kenmore Boulevard to the east, and Lakeshore Boulevard to the west, and by changing the ordinary industry use district U5H3A1 on property bounded by Princeton Street and Edison Avenue on the south, and by the rear of properties on the south side of Ira Avenue to a neighborhood 2.5 to 12 district and declaring an emergency.
Refer and advertise for public hearing.
Item number 6 is an ordinance amending the zoning map by changing the commercial use district classifications U4H2A2 and U4H3A4 on property on the north side of Ira Avenue and east of Princeton Street, and on property on the north side of Kenmore Boulevard and south of Dickerson Street, Lewis Street, and Vincent Street to a mixed-use flex district and declaring an emergency.
Refer and advertise for public hearing. Number 7.
Item number 7 is an ordinance amending the zoning map by changing the single-family residence use district classification U1H1A1 on property generally bounded by West Crozier Street to the north, Ira Avenue to the south, and the east and west sides of Princeton Street, and on property generally bounded by Lloyd Street to the north, Lewis Street to the south, and the property fronting on the west side of Lakeshore Boulevard by changing the commercial use district U4H2A2 on property generally on the north side of Kenmore Boulevard from Ira Avenue to the east and Vincent Street to the west, by changing the ordinary industry use district of classification U5H3A1 on properties having frontage on Ira Avenue between Princeton Street and Edison Avenue, and by changing the retail business use district classification U3H3A4 on property on the north side of Ira Avenue, west of Old Main Street, to a neighborhood flex 2.5 district and declaring an emergency.
Refer and advertise for public hearing.
Number 8 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a grant agreement with Summit Medina Business Alliance Incorporated to provide financial support for the consulting services it provides to residents in furtherance of economic development in the city of Akron and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Becker.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Summit Medina Business and Alliance consistently meets or exceeds goals mandated by the state of Ohio in a number of areas, including capital infusion, annual sales increases, and jobs created. SMBA has a history of reaching out of underserved clients in Medina, Summit, and Portage counties. This includes working with Ohio Jobs and Family Affairs, Mature Services, Veterans Symposium, and local libraries. SMBA is experienced with qualified certified programs such as IQA, Malcolm Baldrige, which can be used to assist clients with their strategic plans, growth, and expansion. What this is, it's a grant that the city will give them for $75,000 to help with the operation. They're located in Bounce. We refer quite a few small businesses to them to help them with a plan for their business and for financing. And they are a godsend, really, for these small businesses. They help them through the process.
Very good, thank you. Is this, I assume the 75,000 is an annual?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Has it been that much for about how long? Has 75,000 been the grant size?
Generally, we do this on a yearly basis to help to offset their costs. They're also subsidized by the state and by Medina, the county, Medina County. So,
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah.
How long has it been 75,000?
It's been 75,000 for about 3 years, and it was 50,000 for probably about 8 years before that.
Okay, very good. Good. No, this is a good thing, without question. Very good thing. Questions or comments from committee members? Council members, Linda Mobian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you tell me, do we get a report as to the businesses that are being helped by this organization? And are these dollars coming from the money that we earn from the JAD?
We do get a report. I don't have the names of the businesses, but I could probably get that. A lot of times that's a confidentiality agreement. But since 2020, they've helped 66 businesses start and over 700 jobs either created or retained, just within the city of Akron.
And the 75,000, does that come from money that we earn from this JAD partnership?
It's JED funds.
Fund.
These are JAD funds?
Yes, correct.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Could they tell us how the diversity of these businesses are? Would they be able to tell us that?
Yes, I can get
Yes,
that
I can get that
information for you.
information for you.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Further questions or comments? Ms. Viviano, do you know about the feedback? Do we have, how that works? Why that?
I'm not sure what the problem is, but I've been trying to mute as soon as somebody online has finished speaking so that we don't get the
Okay.
feedback.
Good, thank you. What is the timeframe on this? Do you need it passed this evening? Is a consent agenda okay?
Consent would
I
be
mean,
fine.
and we could certainly, I think this is kind of a no-brainer. We could pass it this evening. Don't mind doing that. Consent agenda. Any comments from any committee members?
I'm fine with passing it tonight.
Okay. Would you like to make a recommendation?
Recommend suspension of the rules.
Okay, very good. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Thank you. Very good. Item number 9, Ms. Viviano.
Number 9 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement with Integra Mission Critical LLC for the redevelopment of the property located at 1210 Maslin Road, Building C, and declaring an emergency.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a existing company now on Triplet Boulevard. What they do is they make modular data centers, which are obviously in demand, and they have existing 45 employees. Their existing payroll is about $2.5 million. They are expanding tremendously. Within the next 3 years, they are going to hire 150 new employees and add a $10 million payroll. They are moving into the Lockheed Martin, the old Lockheed Martin across from the airport, in over 200,000 square feet because their business has expanded that much. What this development agreement does is it's an incentive distribution over 5 years, and what we will be doing is giving them a refund of 1% of the city income tax for the new employees only. So the city will still net 1.5%. And this is to incentivize, companies like this to bring these new jobs here rather than going to another state or moving.
Copy, yeah, right. This is an existing company here in Akron, right? And they're
Yes.
growing and they're staying here,
Yes.
which is the good news. That's great. Anything further?
No, actually, the building that they will be leaving is about 30,000 square feet, right next to the airport. So we have a lot of companies who will probably be interested in subleasing that or leasing that. So it'll actually create another space for another company to move into.
Good. Questions or comments? Mr. McKittrick?
Thank you, Councilwoman, for letting me borrow your microphone. No, Mr. Becker had explained this. This is a great thing. This is part of my ward, Ward 6, and I'd just like to have my name added to it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKittrick. No, this is wonderful news, and congratulations to those who has worked on this particular piece, and especially seeing them stay here in Akron and grow like this. This is wonderful news, I think. What's the wishes? Is there a hurry on this or not? Or
Consent is fine.
consent is fine? Yeah, this is, let me double check this one. 1 second here. Yeah, this, I think consent might, well, there's not that much here in terms of the agreement itself. Yeah, consent's fine. Is there a recommendation for consent?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Thanks, the ayes have it. Item number 10.
Item number 10 is a resolution expressing support and adoption of the Choice Neighborhoods Transformation Plan by the Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority, AMHA, and declaring an emergency.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. This is asking for council to endorse the planning work that was conducted by the city, AMHA, the Canalway, Dan Rice's group as well, and is related to the zoning, interminable list of zoning regulations that we're also asking you to consider related to Summit Lake work as well. And this is a piece that we would need to have the endorsement in order to apply for that funding for the Summit Lake work related to MHA's transformation down there. And we could refer that as part of that whole process if that works.
Perfect. Very good. Is there a recommendation to refer this item?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, the ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 11, please.
Item number 11 is an ordinance authorizing the Director of the Department of Planning and Urban Development to enter into a contract or contracts with strategic planning consultants for the development of an Akron-Summit County framework for ending homelessness and Akron-Summit County Continuum of Care strategic plan and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Tomek.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. The Akron-Barberton-Summit County Continuum of Care has been in existence for over 20 years. The COC has now established a 501c3 with a full-time executive director and a governing board. The COC and the City of Akron continue to support individuals and families experiencing homelessness. However, having said that, the COC and the city lacks a comprehensive strategic plan as to how to move forward with our initiatives. Therefore, the city and the COC have issued an RFP seeking a consultant or a team of consultants to lead in the development of a framework and strategic plan to address homelessness in this area. Applications were due on February 2nd, 2024, and I do have members here of the Continuum of Care Executive Board who worked with us in assisting the consultant process, so I'd like to defer to them as well to talk a little bit more in depth about the process that we went through.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Can we also have all that have been involved, or going to be involved, I should say?
Members that reviewed the applications? Okay, yeah, we can provide that list to you.
And the planning committee and all that? The structure, I guess, the overall structure.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's, I understand we have two people who are willing to speak here, and they have 20 minutes apiece. Just joking, just joking. No, in all sincerity, if you could please provide for us your name and the operation that you work for,
Yes.
we'd certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is LaToya Harris. I am the Cultural Engagement Officer for the County of Summit, and I also serve as Vice President of the Executive Committee of the Continuum of Care.
Very good, thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to address council. I appreciate Helen inviting us here today. I have served on the Continuum of Care in different aspects for years. Becoming a nonprofit entity within itself and separate from the city, it has grown tremendously. There is extraordinary need for strategic plan is the name. Yes, excuse me. A strategic plan, not only for the structural internally for the Continuum of Care, but also a plan to take Akron as a city and a whole county to the next steps in our evolution with homelessness. We are proud of the work that the county is doing toward homelessness. We are proud of the work the new mayor has planned for homelessness, but we together as a continuum feel that we need a precise plan moving forward in order to carry out this work. I turn it over to Joe Scalise.
Good afternoon. Joe Scalise, I'm Director of Housing Services for United Way of Summit Medina and also a Continuum of Care Executive Board member. I want to tell you that we went through a process through the RFP of enlisting 10 consultants nationwide. We were looking and focused on what's your plan, what's your capacity, what are you doing over the next year to help us leverage a plan to end homelessness that involves all government entities, all faith-based entities, and us as the continuum of care so that we're all working in a linear strategy. And so we invited 10 national applications in, of which we selected 4, 2 local, 2 national in our final group. We did interviews with the entire executive committee. We focused on capacity to execute the plan, ability to center it on experiences of the clients that we have in our community that have experienced homelessness, and what they can do to get out in communities and make sure that there's opportunity for voices to come into this plan from all parts of Akron and Summit County. And so it's really about a 1-year timeline to 14 months, mostly what we saw. We had 4 groups audition in front of our executive committee, and if you don't know this about LaToya, she's tough. So she gave them a good questioning for sure. And we arrived at selecting Tom Albanese Consulting, and Tom is a local entity. He's worked with the city of Medina just recently on their outreach plan to develop a shelter project. He has extensive experience both locally here in Ohio and locally here. I could tell you personally, working with him on the Veterans by Name list in 2017 when we achieved functional zero for veterans. Tom was involved in those too. So we, as an executive committee, support the decision to award the RFP to Tom Albanese Consulting.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. LaToya, thank you for coming in today on your special day, your day off. So just thought I'd throw that in. But thank you for all your time. And there's 2 other, would you like to introduce, there's 2 other folks here as well?
So we have Megan Scheck from HM Life Opportunity and Tammy Skipper from Fair Housing.
Thank you all for coming down this afternoon. Certainly appreciate it. The one thing I'd ask, though, is that if we could be included, council, overall, just in terms of, the planning and some of that, we would really, and I love to hear the fact that you're willing to open it up to the community overall and gather their input. We have heard this council from time to time, and often, especially with the rise of the homelessness here in our community and across the nation, obviously, that, there's a lot of concern, as there should be. And it sounds like you're hoping to hear from all voices out there. And so we too would like to, there's some expertise here on council, and there's some folks who could contribute, I'm sure of that. Would ask that you please extend that invitation to us as well. We certainly appreciate that. Any committee members have any questions or comments? No, I see Ms. Mobian, her hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly would appreciate the opportunity to hear more about this local firm. Is the RFP available for us to see? And can you give us information about the firm? The other question I have, it sounds like you're going to invite others to come to the table, because as this problem continues to grow, because we have experienced an uptick in homelessness in the area about a point in time count, are we figuring out how we involve the voices of new entities becoming a part of this continuum of care group so that there's input there for growth in the areas to be inclusive?
We are consistently seeking new members to be part of the COC as we hear of entities creating homeless programs. We invite them to be part of the process, and that will definitely be part of the strategic planning process as well.
And the RFP,
I'll share the 2 Ohio proposals with the City Council.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, consent agenda okay on this one?
Yes, please, thank you.
Very good. Is there a recommendation for consent?
Make a motion for consent.
A second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good, the ayes have it. And again, thank you so much for coming in this afternoon. We really appreciate it and look forward to working with y'all. Thanks. We're adjourned.
Our next committee today will be the Parks and Recreation Committee, and it will begin at 1:45. Those committee members are Connor, Lombardo, Hardy, Hannah, and Boys. Again, that's the Parks and Recreation Committee, and it will begin at 1:45. Thank you.